Welcome back, Deep Divers. You know where we are. Occult Archives. The part of the show where we like to, well, we kind of like to get into those books that people maybe would rather not talk about.
Right, yeah. You know those ones that kind of give you the shivers a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. But,
Yeah,
not for the sake of it.
right.
We want to actually figure out, like, why do they have this reputation? Why are these ideas? What are the ideas? Like, what's in there that's captivated people for so long?
Yeah.
Made them scared, made them fascinated. It's like there's something there,
Right.
right? So we're going to from like mystical grimoires and stuff about like ancient magic to like full on religious texts, the stuff that really hits at the core of what people think about existence. These books, they carry some weight.
Yeah. It's not just the writing. There's this idea that they have a kind of a power in themselves, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's what we're trying to get at, not just sort of dismiss them as dangerous or whatever, but like try to understand what it is.
Why?
Yeah, exactly.
What makes them tick? Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we're gonna open a book, and it is called "The Occult Significance of Blood,"
Hmm.
which is a title that is it gets your attention, doesn't it?
Like it.
It's by Rudolf Steiner. It's a 1912 work, so it's been around for a while.
Mhm.
And we're looking at the version republished by Global Gray. So this is our deep dive into the occult significance of blood, the esoteric key to human evolution. So we're really getting into the nitty gritty here. And the thing is, blood is fascinating, right? It's like it's not just this like biological thing. It's so much more than that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's so deeply connected to life itself, to our identity, to our, it's in our rituals, it's in our stories. It's been, throughout history, it's had this kind of this sacred, this very special significance.
Yeah, and you can't help but think about all the myths, all the legends. When you think about blood, you think about vampires, you think about blood rituals, you think about all this stuff, right? So there's clearly something going on here beyond just the biology. And Steiner starts off with a quote. I'm sure you've heard it. Blood is a very special fluid,
Oh yeah, Mephistopheles.
from Goethe's Faust.
Yeah.
And like, you hear that and you think, oh, okay, blood pact, devil, pretty straightforward, pretty sinister.
Yeah.
But apparently, the Goethe scholars, they've really gone to town on this line. Like, what does it actually mean?
Oh yeah, there's been huge debates about this. And like there's Professor Miner. He had a very interesting take on this, saying that the devil Mephistopheles is actually an enemy of the blood.
What?
Yeah, because blood is life. It sustains life. So as the enemy of humanity, the devil would naturally be against it. And so by demanding the blood signature, it's kind of like a strange twist.
But how does that make sense, though? Like, if you're against something, why would you demand it? It seems a bit backwards,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and Steiner actually pushes back on that quite strongly.
Yeah, yeah.
He suggests that the much more, straightforward explanation, and the one that kind of lines up with the Faust story and the tradition, is that blood had a very specific power, a significance, to the devil. That's why he wanted it. He wanted to harness that power.
It's like the devil wouldn't go through all that trouble just for a drop of blood if it didn't have some kind of power.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you see this idea of the blood pact appearing again and again,
Yeah.
in different myths and different legends. So it seems like there's this underlying understanding that having control over someone's blood,
Means you have control over them.
yeah, you have power over them. It's like this deep this link between the blood and the person themselves
So that's a big takeaway right there, right? Power over blood.
equals power over the person.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so then you start to think about how these ideas show up in other places, like in folklore, in mythology, and all these stories that we tell each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to kind of brush it off, right? Oh, it's just a story, it's just a myth. But Steiner is saying, no, there's something deeper going on here.
Absolutely. The occult perspective is that these stories, they're not just, childish fairy tales. They're actually expressions of ancient wisdom. They're trying to tell us something about the universe, about our place in it, But they do it in this kind of symbolic language.
It's like a secret code almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're trying to encode this this knowledge in a way that maybe, the uninitiated wouldn't understand.
Right. So it's like you need a key. You need the right kind of knowledge to unlock the secrets.
Exactly. And Steiner calls this kind of this way of looking at things, this way of understanding these stories, he calls it spiritual investigation. It's like you have to look beyond the surface. You have to understand the underlying principles at play.
And that's where this whole idea of as above, so below comes in.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a big deal in esoteric thought. And it's something that we see pop up again and again when we're talking about these kind of occult topics.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean? As above, so below.
So it's basically saying that there's a connection, right?
Okay.
Between the physical world, the world that we can see and touch, and this deeper spiritual reality. It's like a mirror. The spiritual world is reflected in the physical world.
Okay.
And the physical world is a manifestation of the spiritual world.
So how does blood fit into this? Like, we're talking about blood, it's very physical.
Right.
How does this as above, so below connect to that?
Well, if we look at wisdom, at spiritual knowledge, right? Steiner says that true understanding comes from experience, and particularly from overcoming challenges, from even painful experiences. He describes wisdom as like crystallized pain.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that, even in modern research, more materialistically minded research, they've noticed this connection as well, like in physiognomy, the study of facial features.
Yeah.
They've noticed that thinkers, people who've really thought deeply about things, they often have this expression that suggests that they've kind of absorbed pain.
So it's like their face is showing the depth of their experience.
Exactly. It's like the physical form is carrying a record of their inner journey. Yeah. And if we take this idea of as above, so below, and we apply it to the whole natural world, Steiner says that the mineral world, the plant world, the animal world, all of these can be seen as physical expressions, as like a physiognomy of a spiritual reality.
It's like the whole world is a reflection of something deeper.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so understanding the spiritual background of blood, it's not just some, abstract philosophical thing.
Right.
Steiner says that it can actually help us to understand some really important questions, like
Right.
like education, like race, even things like colonization.
Really?
Yeah. The idea is that if we
Yeah.
can understand the deeper spiritual essence that's connected to blood, that we can get a better grasp of the fundamental conditions that shape different groups of people.
Okay.
And he's very careful to say that we shouldn't take a simplistic approach to this, that we need to be aware of these deeper factors when different cultures interact, when societies develop.
But he's saying there are differences, like fundamental differences between people that are connected to their blood.
Yeah, and he sees these differences as part of this kind of evolutionary process. He's not talking about like fixed hierarchies or anything like that, but he is suggesting that different groups might be at different stages in this evolutionary journey, and that this is reflected in their physical makeup, their etheric makeup.
That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is, and it's important to engage with these ideas critically and with an awareness of the historical context.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not something to just kind of gloss over.
Right.
So we've talked about this kind of spiritual perspective on blood, but we also need to acknowledge the scientific perspective, right? Like the basic biology. We know that blood carries oxygen, it carries nutrients. It's what keeps our bodies functioning.
Absolutely. Yeah. The scientific view is that it's this vital medium, it's what connects our inner systems to the outer world. It absorbs oxygen, it nourishes the tissues, it allows for communication within the body.
It's like the lifeblood, literally,
Yeah.
of the body.
Yeah.
And Steiner actually quotes someone who described blood as like a second being or liquid life. So it's not just this passive fluid. It's like an active entity in itself.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, even from a purely evolutionary perspective, blood is relatively late development.
Really?
Yeah. Ernst Haeckel, who was a biologist back in the day, he noticed that blood is one of the last things to develop in an embryo. The bones and the muscles form first, and then the blood comes later. And so the idea is that blood formation was also a late event in cosmic evolution. It's like all of these earlier developmental forces had to be kind of refined, had to be elevated to create this crowning act of evolution, as he called it.
It's like blood is the peak of evolution.
In a way, yeah.
Okay, so to really understand what Steiner's getting at with this whole spiritual background of
Yeah.
blood, we need to talk about some theosophy,
Okay.
right? Because he uses theosophy to kind of explain the above that's reflected in the below of blood.
Right, right. So one of the core ideas in theosophy is this sevenfold nature of the human being.
Sevenfold.
Yeah. So first you have the physical body, right, which is the material form that we all have,
Okay.
and that's something that we share with the mineral kingdom.
Okay.
Then you have the etheric body, or the vital body, and this is what animates the physical body. And this is something that we share with the plant kingdom.
Okay.
Now, it's important to note that this etheric body is not the same as the luminiferous ether that physicists were talking about back in the 19th century. It's a different kind of ether. It's more like a vital life force.
Okay, so it's like the energy that makes things alive.
Yeah,
As I heard of that,
exactly.
right.
And then you have the astral body, and this is the principle that brings feeling to life. It's what allows us to experience sensations, pain, pleasure, emotions, all of that. And this is something that we share with the animal kingdom.
Okay, so we've got the physical body, the etheric body, the astral body,
Mhm.
and that's what we share with minerals, plants, and animals.
Mhm.
So what makes humans special? Like, what's the human element here?
Well, that's where the ego comes in, or the I. Steiner talks about how Jean-Paul, the writer, he had this really profound realization as a child that he was an ego, that he was a being that could refer to itself as I.
That's a pretty big realization for a kid.
Yeah, it is. And Steiner points out that this word I, it's a very special word,
Yeah.
It's a self-referential word. Only the individual can truly apply it to themselves.
Right, like no one else can say I and mean me.
Exactly. And he even connects this to the unutterable name of God in the Hebrew tradition.
Wow.
Yeah, and the idea that there's this kind of self-existent essence that we all have, this I am that I am.
Okay, so that's the fourth principle, the ego,
Mhm.
the I,
Right.
and there are three more.
Yeah, so the next three are manas, which is often translated as spirit self,
Okay.
buddhi, which is life spirit, and then atma, which is spirit man.
Okay, so those are like the really high level spiritual principles.
Yeah. And Steiner says that these higher principles, they exist in a kind of rudimentary form within the blood, and they represent the future stages of human development.
So we're all carrying around the potential for higher spiritual evolution within our blood.
That's the idea.
Okay. So we've got these seven principles. How do they all fit together? Like, how do the higher ones relate to the lower ones?
So Steiner explains that the upper spiritual triad, the manas, buddhi, atma, that they find expression through the lower four principles.
Okay.
So, for example, the etheric body,
Yeah.
that's what takes these lifeless forces from the cosmos and transforms them into the living sap that nourishes plants and animals and humans.
It's like the bridge between the spiritual world and the physical world.
Yeah, exactly. And then the astral body, it interpenetrates the etheric body,
Okay.
and it makes it possible for us to have these inner experiences of external movement.
So it's like the astral body gives us the capacity to feel.
To feel, to sense.
Yes.
And he points out that beings that only have the first three bodies, the physical, the etheric, and the astral, they're mainly focused on their own internal processes. They're not really engaging with the external world in the same way that humans do.
Right.
And then we have the nervous system,
Right.
which is also a really important part of this.
Yeah. How does that fit in?
So Steiner describes this kind of evolution of the nervous system, starting with the sympathetic nervous system.
All right.
And he says that the system it's kind of a reflection of these broader cosmic processes. Like there's a dim awareness of cosmic laws within the sympathetic nervous system. And then you have the development of the spinal cord and the brain. And this is what allows us to connect with the outer world. And this is a big shift for the astral body, because before this, the astral body was kind of just passively existing within this cosmic life. But now, with the development of the spinal cord and the brain, the astral body starts to have its own its own inward existence.
So it's like the astral body is becoming more individualized.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And
okay.
the higher nervous system, using this more developed astral body, that's what allows us to create these representations of the outer world within ourselves.
So our ability to perceive the world, to think about the world, it's all connected to the evolution of the nervous system and the astral body.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so how does blood fit into all of this?
So blood is actually the transformed, individualized etheric body.
Okay.
Just like the brain and the spinal cord are the expression of the individualized astral body.
Okay, so it's like these two fundamental principles, the etheric and the astral.
Mm-hmm.
They're being individualized, they're becoming more specific to each person.
Right.
And this is what leads to the development of the ego.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does blood actually do? Like, what's its function?
So blood, it takes these mental pictures that are formed by the brain,
Okay.
and it transforms them into these living forces that are used to build the human body.
Hmm.
And it also interacts with the oxygen from the external world,
Right.
So it's like blood is this meeting point between the inner world of thoughts and the outer world of form.
It's like the blood is taking the blueprints from the mind and using the materials from the outside world to build the body.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And Steiner also talks about ancestry and experience in relation to blood.
Mm-hmm.
How do those things play into it?
So our bloodline, our ancestry, that dictates our blood relationship.
Okay.
And Steiner says that the past, everything that our ancestors have experienced, it's carried within our blood. And the future potential of our lineage is also being formed within it.
Mm.
And he points to these altered states of consciousness,
Hmm.
like hypnosis, or what he calls atavistic clairvoyance, which is kind of like a throwback to earlier forms of perception.
Okay.
And he says that in these starts, our higher consciousness is kind of subdued. And so this allows for a deeper awareness of cosmic laws to kind of surface. And this comes through the sympathetic nervous system, where the blood is reflecting the outer world as it's being shaped by ancestral forces.
So it's like in these altered states, we're accessing some kind of ancestral memory bank that's stored in our blood.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Wow.
Right.
And he contrasts this with our modern waking consciousness,
Right.
where we're mostly perceiving the world through our senses, and we're forming these intellectual concepts that then influence our blood.
Right.
He's saying there was a time when blood contained not only sense perceptions, but also this inheritance of bodily forms and ancestral experiences.
Mm.
And so people had this much more direct sense of their ancestral life within them.
Yeah, it was a different kind of consciousness, It was
Yeah.
more dreamlike, less
Hmm.
defined. It was a more collective sense of I that encompassed the whole lineage.
Okay, and so this changed, right?
Yeah.
Like something happened that caused this shift in consciousness.
Right. So Steiner talks about exogamy, which is marriage outside of your immediate tribal or family group.
Okay.
And he contrasts this with endogamy, which is intermarriage within close groups.
Right.
And he says that endogamy tended to preserve the bloodline and this hazy clairvoyance.
Okay.
But exogamy, while it broke down tribal structures and created new connections,
Mhm.
it also led to the birth of intellectual understanding, of abstract thought.
So it's like we gained something and we lost something.
Yeah, exactly. And so our modern consciousness, he says, it evolved from this earlier, dimmer state of clairvoyance.
Okay, so the mixing of bloodlines led to the development of the intellect, but it also severed that direct connection to ancestral memory.
Right.
Okay, and then he talks about how the environment shapes the blood of modern people versus how it influenced the blood of more primitive people.
Right. So for modern people, the environment has a very strong influence on the blood.
Okay.
It shapes our inner being in response to the outer world.
Okay.
But in ancient times, Steiner suggests that the inner inherited constitution was more directly expressed in the blood.
Okay.
And this led to this inheritance of ancestral recollections and tendencies.
Okay, so it's like the blood was more connected to the past.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And exogamy, it disrupted this close ancestral link, and this led to a more individualized personal life and a morality that's based on personal experience.
So it's like we became more individual, but we also lost that connection to the collective wisdom of our ancestors.
Right.
Okay, so this brings us back to that occult maxim that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That which has power over thy blood has power over thee. And he's saying that the mixing of foreign blood, it weakened the blood's ability to respond to these traditional spiritual powers.
Right, and he emphasizes that any force that wants to have mastery over an individual, it has to influence their blood.
Okay.
And this is how he explains the deeper meaning of Mephistopheles demanding Faust's blood signature.
Right.
It's not just a symbolic act of a pact. It's a way of gaining control over Faust's ego at a very fundamental level.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this has implications for things like colonization, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
How so?
So Steiner says that the difficulty that people encountered when they tried to impose a new civilization on a people whose blood is very attuned to their ancestral environment, that helps to explain why some indigenous populations decline when they came into contact with colonizers.
So it's like their blood was so connected to their land, their way of life, that when that was disrupted, they couldn't adapt.
Yeah, it's like they were being asked to be something that they weren't.
Wow.
Yeah. And he also talks about how modern science has discovered that mixing blood from distantly related animals can be fatal.
Okay.
And he points out that this is something that occultism has known for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, and he draws this parallel between the consequences of mixing blood from different species and the loss of ancient clairvoyance in humans.
Okay.
Because of exogamy.
Right.
So it's like the degree of separation matters.
Okay.
And he concludes by saying that our modern intellectual life, it's a result of this blood mingling.
Okay.
And that the ego resides within the blood, just like other aspects of our being are connected to the physical body, the etheric body, the astral body.
Right.
And he comes back to that opening line from Faust, blood is a very special fluid.
Yeah.
And he emphasizes the depth of knowledge that's contained within that statement.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've gone from Goethe to ancient myths to theosophy to modern science. And it's all connected by this idea of the occult significance of blood.
Yeah.
And it's clearly much more than just a biological necessity.
Right. We've seen how it's been seen as this vessel of ancestral memory.
Yeah.
As a key factor in the evolution of consciousness as part of our individual identity.
And the idea that the intellect developed as a result of the mixing of bloodlines, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. And the power dynamics associated with blood.
Right.
The idea that if you control someone's blood, you control them.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful concept.
It really makes you think about the phrase, it runs in the blood in a whole new way.
It does.
So for all you deep divers out there listening to this, I want you to think about this for a second. Like, what are the subtle influences of your ancestry that might still be at play within you? How does this understanding of blood as something more than just biology, how does that change your perspective on human nature, on how cultures interact, on the power of ancient stories and symbols? Because it seems like this very special fluid, it still holds secrets, even in our modern world.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about.
It is.